How did an organization born in a small mountain town come to control global drug trafficking for decades? The Sinaloa Cartel is not just a criminal group. It is a structure with international reach, capable of moving tons of drugs in submarines, tunnels, and planes, while negotiating with politicians, recruiting hitmen, and unleashing wars in the streets. From Badiraguato to New York, from poppy fields to U.S. federal courts, its history is filled with betrayals, impossible escapes, international operations, and thousands of victims. But to understand it, we must go beyond headlines and narco corridors. We must face what it truly represents: a network built on impunity, inequality, and the absence of the state in vast regions of Mexico. This informational documentary explores the origin, expansion, and internal fracture of the Sinaloa Cartel, not to glorify it, but to understand how criminal power operates when no one stops it. On July 25, 2024, an event occurred that changed the landscape of organized crime in Mexico. Unexpectedly, Ismael Zambada Garcia, known as El Mayo, was handed over to U.S. authorities. Zambada had operated in hiding for over 4 decades, never imprisoned, never captured in any raid, until that day. According to multiple journalistic sources and unofficial leaks, his handover was not the result of a state operation. It was the product of a betrayal from within the Sinaloa Cartel itself. Reportedly, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's sons, summoned El Mayo to a private meeting in Culiacan, allegedly to discuss matters with a Sinaloan politician. What happened next was an ambush. Armed men blocked his path, subdued him, and took him to a nearby ranch. Hours later, El Mayo was forced to board an aircraft that would take him directly to a U.S. airbase. There, he was formally arrested on charges related to drug trafficking and organized crime. The news is spread like wildfire. El Mayo's fall was seen by his allies as an internal betrayal orchestrated by El Chapo's sons, known as Los Chapitos. The fracture had existed for years, but this event marked the definitive breaking point. Armed confrontations began in urban and rural areas of Sinaloa. There were reports of blockades, vehicle burnings, shootouts, and attacks targeting operators from both factions. The war has affected not only the groups involved, but the general population. Forced displacement in rural areas, closure of schools and hospitals, businesses shutting down due to extortion or threats, unofficial curfews imposed by fear. As of October 2025, reports show over 800 missing persons, at least 11 confirmed deaths in direct clashes, thousands affected by collateral violence. The federal government deployed military forces, elements of the National Guard, and the Navy to critical zones like Culiacan, Badiraguato, and Guasave. However, the presence of armed forces has not fully stopped the violence. To understand the power this organization holds today, we must go back several decades. The state of Sinaloa, located on Mexico's northwest coast, is a mountainous, agricultural region with historically high levels of poverty. Its terrain, rugged, remote and forested, has long been fertile ground for drug production. In the 1930s, large-scale poppy cultivation began, poppy being the base plant for producing opium. This product was mainly destined for the U.S. market, where demand was rising. Opium became the first major commodity of modern drug trafficking in Mexico, and in that context emerged one of the first major criminal operators, Pedro Avilés Pérez, known as El León de la Sierra. Avilés was a pioneer in organizing land routes to traffic drugs to the northern border. He's also considered one of the first to corrupt authorities to ensure the safe passage of his shipments. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, Avilés consolidated an operational model that included small local poppy producers, intermediaries in charge of transportation, paid protection from rural police, soldiers, and politicians, rudimentary storage and distribution systems. Over time, other figures rose within the business. Salcido Uzeta, El Cochiloco, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, a former judicial police agent, Rafael Caro Quintero from Badiraguato, Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, aka Don Neto. By the mid-1970s, Pedro Avilés was killed by federal forces. He was succeeded by Felix Gallardo, who further professionalized operations and created Mexico's first major drug trafficking structure, the Guadalajara Cartel. In the 1980s, the Guadalajara Cartel became the most powerful criminal organization in Mexico. It was the first group to establish a nationwide structure with defined routes, regional bosses, financial operators, and international relations. Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, also known as El Jefe de Jefes, the boss of bosses, unified various traffickers under a single command. This cartel was the first to establish direct ties with Colombian cartels, such as Pablo Escobar's, facilitating the large-scale entry of cocaine through Mexican territory on its way to the United States. Profits grew exponentially. With them, so did the ability to corrupt and operate with impunity. During this period, many future cartel leaders gained training, experience, and contacts. Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, Logistics Manager. Ismael El Mayo Zambada, Regional Supervisor. Héctor El Güero Palma, Key Operator. The Arellano Felix brothers, who would later form the Tijuana Cartel. The Carrillo Fuentes brothers, who would form the Juarez Cartel. The power of the Guadalajara Cartel began to fracture in 1985 after an event that would change the relationship between the United States and Mexico in the fight against drug trafficking, the kidnapping and murder of DIEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena. Camarena had been assigned to the DEA office in Guadalajara, and during his time in the country, he investigated the operations of several cartels. One of his major findings was the location of a ranch called El Búfalo in the state of Chihuahua. At that ranch, over 10,000 tons of marijuana were found, ready for export. The seizure, valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, directly affected the interests of the Guadalajara Cartel. Shortly after, Camarena was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered. His death prompted a forceful response from the U.S. government. Political and diplomatic pressure forced Mexico to take action. In the following years, 3 of the cartel's top leaders were arrested: Rafael Caro Quintero, Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, Don Neto, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo. The latter was arrested in 1989, marking the official end of the Guadalajara cartel as a centralized structure. But its collapse did not mean the end of drug trafficking. Quite the opposite. The power vacuum gave rise to several new independent cartels, each operating in different regions of the country. With the fall of the Guadalajara leadership, former allies turned into territorial rivals. Among them, 4 major groups emerged: the Tijuana Cartel, led by the Arellano Felix brothers; the Juarez Cartel, headed by Amado Carrillo Fuentes; the Gulf Cartel, which already operated in northeastern Mexico; and the new Sinaloa Cartel, formed by Joaquin Guzman Loera, Ismael Zambada Garcia, Hector Palma, and Juan José Esparragoza Moreno. The Sinaloa Cartel established itself in its namesake state, leveraging the mountainous and isolated terrain of the Sierra Madre Occidental, the logistical experience of its founders, inherited connections with Colombian suppliers, and a corruption network spanning local, state, and federal authorities. During its early years, the cartel focused mainly on the production of marijuana and poppy, control of border routes like Sonora, Baja California, and Chihuahua, expansion through alliances with smaller local criminal groups. In the early 1990s, the Sinaloa Cartel faced its first direct rival, the Tijuana Cartel, led by the Arellano Felix brothers. The fight for control over the Tijuana border crossing, one of the most lucrative routes for trafficking into the U.S., led to one of the most violent drug wars in Mexican history. One of the first incidents was an attack on the family of El Güero Palma, a close associate of El Chapo. According to various sources, a Venezuelan hitman sent by the Arellano brothers infiltrated the family, seduced Palma's wife, murdered her, and later killed his children by throwing them off a bridge. In retaliation, the Sinaloa Cartel attempted to assassinate the Arellano Felix brothers at a nightclub in Puerto Vallarta, but failed. Later, the Arellano brothers orchestrated an ambush against El Chapo at the Guadalajara airport. During the shootout, Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo was killed, sparking national and international outrage. The Mexican government increased its pursuit of cartel leaders. As a result, Joaquin Guzman Loera was arrested for the first time on June 9, 1993, in Guatemala and extradited to Mexico. He was imprisoned in the Puente Grande Federal Prison in Jalisco. Although El Chapo was imprisoned, the Sinaloa Cartel did not dismantle. On the contrary, its operations continued under the leadership of Ismael El Mayo Zambada, El Azul, Juan José Esparragoza Moreno, the Beltran Leiva brothers, who joined the group, and several mid-level commanders who kept the network active. In 1995, Hector El Güero Palma was also arrested. Inside the prison, El Chapo met Damaso López Núñez, the penitentiary's deputy director. Damaso became a key ally. He facilitated illegal privileges inside the prison and later organized El Chapo's first escape, in January 2001. The escape was carried out using a laundry cart, marking El Chapo's return to operational leadership within the Sinaloa Cartel. With El Chapo free, the Sinaloa Cartel strengthened its structure: air, maritime, and land routes, use of submarines, light aircraft, trains, and transborder tunnels, storage centers across Central and South America, alliances with new groups in Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. It is estimated that during this period, the organization exported tons of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana to the United States, Europe, and Asia. The Sinaloa Cartel's model differed from that of its competitors. Rather than imposing control through sheer violence, they preferred alliances and absorption of local groups. This allowed them to expand without initiating open war against every rival, at least during that stage. After consolidating control over the Northwest, the Sinaloa Cartel entered into conflict with another major organization, the Juarez Cartel, then led by Amado Carrillo Fuentes, known as El Señor de los Cielos, the Lord of the Skies. Though there was initially an informal alliance to share routes and territories, tensions escalated after Amado Carrillo's death in 1997. Leadership passed to his brother, Rodolfo Carrillo Fuentes, who had multiple disagreements with El Chapo. In an attempt to resolve differences, both sides agreed to meet. But when El Chapo extended his hand for a truce, Rodolfo ignored it and walked away without greeting him. This was seen as a personal insult. Weeks later, Rodolfo Carrillo Fuentes was assassinated. The Juarez Cartel responded by permanently breaking ties with the Sinaloa Cartel. Another major rupture occurred with the Beltran-Leyva brothers, former allies of both El Chapo and El Mayo. Their structure was critical within the cartel. They were in charge of security, intelligence, and operational violence. In 2008, Alfredo Beltran-Leyva was arrested in Culiacan. The Beltran brothers directly accused Joaquin Guzman of handing him over to the authorities. That accusation triggered a brutal internal war. In retaliation, the Beltran-Leyva group assassinated Edgar Guzman Lopez, one of El Chapo's sons, in a shopping center in Culiacan. The escalation included kidnappings, torture, murders, and massacres. Finally, in December 2009, Arturo Beltran-Leyva, the group's leader, was killed by the Mexican Navy in a raid in Cuernavaca, Morelos. After his death, the group fragmented into smaller cells, many of which joined other cartels such as Los Zetas, or continued to operate independently under names like Los Mazatlecos or Guerreros Unidos. During the 2000s and 2010s, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman became the most recognizable face of Mexican drug trafficking, not only because of his role in the Sinaloa Cartel, but also due to how national and international media portrayed him. Originally from Badiraguato, Guzman was listed among the most powerful men in the world by Forbes magazine between 2009 and 2013. He was also considered by the DEA to be the most wanted criminal in the world after the death of Osama bin Laden. During that time, the Sinaloa Cartel consolidated as the main drug exporter to the U.S., an organization with presence in at least 35 U.S. states, a group with operations in more than 50 countries, a network capable of moving drugs in submarines, planes, containers, trains, tunnels, and fishing boats. El Chapo was the visible figure, but he operated alongside a powerful leadership circle. El Mayo Zambada, his longtime associate, El Azul, considered the most discreet of the trio, Damaso Lopez Núñez, aka El Licenciado, a former official who organized his first prison escape. El Chapo was recaptured on February 22, 2014, in a joint operation by the Mexican Navy and the DEA in an apartment in Mazatlan. However, on July 11, 2015, he escaped for the second time, this time from Altiplano, one of the highest security prisons in Mexico. The escape route was a tunnel over 1.5 kilometers long, equipped with rails, ventilation, and lighting. The tunnel connected directly to the shower in his cell and ended in a warehouse outside the prison. A motorcycle mounted on rails transported him through the tunnel. The escape exposed deep levels of internal corruption. It was later revealed that his wife, Emma Coronel, had participated in the operation, along with Damaso Lopez and several other collaborators. They had purchased the land where the tunnel would end, a getaway vehicle, tools, and even a GPS-enabled watch to locate the cell with precision. The event became an international scandal. After remaining a fugitive for 6 months, on January 8, 2016, El Chapo was captured once again, this time in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, in an operation called Operativo Cisne Negro, Black Swan Operation. While he was being tracked, it was discovered that he was in talks to produce a movie about his life. Mexican actress Kate Del Castillo and American actor Sean Penn were part of the communications. This helped intelligence agencies locate him. After his capture, he was returned to Altiplano prison. A year later, in January 2017, he was extradited to the United States. During the so-called trial of the century, held in New York, several witnesses testified against him, including former partners, operators, and public officials. One of the most explosive testimonies linked high-ranking Mexican officials such as Genaro Garcia Luna, former Secretary of Public Security, to the Sinaloa Cartel. In July 2019, Joaquin Guzman Loera was sentenced to life in prison for drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime. He is currently serving his sentence in a maximum security prison in Colorado. After El Chapo's extradition in 2017, the Sinaloa Cartel underwent an internal transformation. The power vacuum left space for a new generation of leaders. Among them, the sons of Guzman Loera stood out, known as Los Chapitos: Iván Archibaldo Guzmán Salazar, Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar, Ovidio Guzmán López, also known as El Ratón, Joaquín Guzmán López. These four brothers assumed control over a significant portion of the cartel's operations, particularly those related to the production and trafficking of fentanyl, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. Fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid, has caused thousands of overdose deaths in North America. and its trafficking has created international pressure on Mexico. Los Chapitos modernized certain criminal practices, using technology, digital networks, and more complex money laundering systems. They also strengthened violent structures to control their territories and confront rivals. But their rise to power was not accepted by everyone. While El Chapo's sons took control of certain regions, another faction defended the legacy of Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the historic leader who had maintained balance within the organization for years. This faction is known as Los Mayitos and includes Ismael Zambada Imperial, El Mayito Gordo, Vicente Zambada Niebla, El Vicentillo, Serafín Zambada Ortiz, Ismael Zambada Siqueiros, El Mayito Flaco, who is said to currently lead the faction's armed wing. Tensions between both groups grew over time, but remained under control due to El Mayo's leadership. Everything changed with his capture in July 2024, in an event that multiple media outlets reported as a direct betrayal by Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of Los Chapitos. This event marked the beginning of a civil war within the cartel. Los Mayitos accused Los Chapitos of handing over their father and launched a direct offensive against them. Since August 2024, Sinaloa has been immersed in a new wave of violence. Armed clashes, roadblocks, attacks on strategic facilities, and mass disappearances have been reported across several areas of the state, including Culiacán, Badiraguato, Guasave, Navolato, Mazatlan. According to reports from local media and human rights organizations, more than 800 people have been reported missing. At least 11 deaths have been confirmed in direct confrontations. Dozens of businesses have closed. The population has begun to impose self-curfews, avoiding going out after 9 p.m. The armed forces have been deployed in the state, including patrols by the Navy, National Guard, and Army. However, territorial control remains disputed. The Mexican government has acknowledged that current levels of violence are the result of the reconfiguration of organized crime in the region. The current state of the Sinaloa Cartel is very different from that of previous decades. On one hand, the cartel maintains international operations, control of routes, and significant logistical capabilities. On the other hand, it faces an internal fracture that threatens its cohesion. The weakening of traditional leadership, with El Chapo imprisoned in the US and El Mayo captured in 2024, has left power in the hands of younger, more violent leaders with less negotiating capacity. Los Chapitos now face increasing international pressure. The United States has offered multi-million-dollar rewards for their capture, and some have already been detained or are in extradition proceedings. Some analysts believe the war between factions not only seeks territorial control, but also aims to secure alliances with external actors, other cartels, corrupt authorities, or armed groups in Central and South America. The future of the Sinaloa Cartel is uncertain. Several scenarios could unfold. A complete reconfiguration of the cartel, with one faction overtaking the other. Total fragmentation, giving rise to new regional criminal groups. Temporary alliances with other cartels, such as CJNG, to maintain international operations. an increase in government pressure, which could result in more arrests, but also more violence. In any case, the most direct consequences will continue to be suffered by civilian populations. Children recruited into organized crime, displaced women fleeing the violence, families torn apart, entire communities living in fear and uncertainty. The Sinaloa Cartel is not just a story of drug lords and prison escapes. It reflects decades of institutional abandonment, structural inequality, and systemic corruption. It is also the result of international policies that have prioritized repression over prevention, and of a collective failure to offer real alternatives in Mexico's most vulnerable regions. To understand its history is not to justify it, it is to recognize the complexity of the phenomenon in order to address its consequences with responsibility, strategy, and humanity. If you made it this far, you already know this is more than just a story about drug lords. It's a mirror of power, corruption, and everything left unsaid. We dig deeper into the stories no one wants to tell. Subscribe to ENIGMAZE to uncover the darker layers of history, conflict, and power. We don't do surface, we do the uncomfortable truths.